Hey everyone, what is up? Welcome back to this episode of How to Build Threads from Scratch. In the last episode, we went over the whole threads flow of like creating posts, being able to create different threads, and then being able to show a very basic return of what's in the database. Remember, we're only adding, this is a thread itself, 1111, but there's a thread of 222 and 333. So we're only going to show like the parent item on this home feed. But what we want to do is also be able to click on this and be able to see the full thread, just like on the Threads app. You want to see the whole conversation going around a main post. And that'll show the thread that's created by the user and then also the replies as well. I don't know if we're going to get to the replies just to be able to reply just yet, but we want to be able to extend this threads functionality. But first thing I'm going to do is actually go into using TanStack as a hook. So hooks allow you to repurpose some API calls or code. Let's say, for example, use getting posts. Right now, we're just calling get posts, or we're calling it get threads, whatever it may be. So we can name it whatever we want. We're calling get all the posts on just this home feed. But we're going to be using this actual call a lot. The inputs might change, like what we select or how we query, but we're always going to be pulling from the post quite often. So, for example, on this home feed, we're going to be calling get posts. On search, there is the ability to search a post by the location, search a post by a user, and those are all calling get posts. Likes, an activity. You're going to get all the posts that you've liked. You're going to get all the posts that you're mentioning. You're going to get all the posts that, let's see, what else? That were in your location? No, not that one. But anyway, you kind of get the point. Oh, and on profile, you're going to get all the posts that you created, all the posts that you liked. And so it's all different variations of the same API call. And not only do we want to create a hook because it's going to be reused a lot, but we're going to use this library called TanStack Query. And this is a library that allows us to call API calls, which we can actually do without this library. But there's a ton of functionality that comes along with it. So actually, I'm gonna install this, and while it's installing, we're gonna go over some of the other functionality. So npmi TanStack React Query, and then if we go down to use, I definitely passed it. Use query. Expo go quit, of course. It quit because I was installing a library and I had it still running. Let's rerun this real quick. All right, so we can see all the inputs that it comes with. So like data, we're going to be using that one. That's just actually, if you call the API, this is the data that's being returned, an error that's returned. What other common ones are there? The fetch status, we're going to use is loading. So maybe an API call is taking a little longer to load than the front end expects. So you could put like a loader screen in it. You could do is stale. That's a good one if you have the same data. Since TanStack Query actually can cache the data as well. So let's go over that real quick. Since it can cache the data, we don't have to inherently call this get threads call every single time. So what do I mean by that? Right now, when we put the supabase.from select is order, whatever it may be, it's calling get threads every single time this path name changes. And we're doing that because we just want to be able to get the most up-to-date information. In development, information does not really change that much, so it's not that big a deal. But in production, that would change all the time. And so every single time we change a page, okay, we're coming back here, it's getting called again. We're going to put a post, it's getting called again. And like you can't actually see it, but it is getting called. And if it's the same information, it doesn't really matter. It's still getting called, it's still querying the database every single time. So in order to prevent it from being called and to increase the speed of it, right now, speed's not an issue because there's only 6 posts, so it's not that big a deal. But of course, that's not going to be the case when you go into production. We're going to use TanStack Query to kind of cache that data. So what TanStack Query allows you to do is like, okay, this set of data is the same. And what TanStack Query can do is like it kind of does like a diff of the new information coming in. It can keep what it already has, so it could keep all these 6, but if you put a new post, it can append that new item to the list of posts without having to query the remaining 6 every single time. So maybe instead of calling the function itself, we could call another function called refetch. So what does that look like in practice? So we have this hooks folder that was empty, and I put a very, very basic React query, TanStack query in here. So what this is going to look like is we have one function called usePost, and this is where TanStack Query comes into play. So we're going to import useQuery, and useQuery, you can see some of the data inputs or outputs that we just went over. So data is loading error, and that comes from data error is loading. So we can import any one of these. We could do like status or refetch, and we could see like if we import one that doesn't exist, hello world, it'll throw an error because that doesn't exist as an option. Right now we're just going to go with the basic ones. Data is loading an error. Then we have this query key. So this is kind of cool because this post key, right now we're only calling this one time. So we're only on the home page. So it's going to be, the key is always going to be the same. The cool part here is that we could pass in like user ID is a good example. Like, okay, let's pass in the user ID. This home page is going to call get post without a user, and then on profile maybe we pass in the user ID. And so it has like 2 different sets of data that it could cache that it's going to be using on 2 different pages. So it's the same API returning different things for different pages. So it could cache each one of them separately so that when you go back and forth between home and profile, it's not calling the same thing over and over again. Right now we're going to keep it simple with post and then the actual query itself. So we could put the call here and like do const superbase from post, blah, 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 but we want to kind of consolidate and make it a little bit cleaner. So what we're going to do is instead call get post and then put the superbase in here. Okay, and what we actually want to do is on the home page, we want to just copy this whole thing. I think it's already the same, but just in case. And then if no error, return data. And then how we call that is we're gonna export use post. So this get post right now is only called internally. If we didn't want to use TanStack Query, we could just do actually we would have to export it first. We could import get post. So it's throwing me an error, but it's throwing me an error because it could be null. But essentially, this is calling the API directly. So this is exactly the same thing we just had, but with it being abstracted into its own function. But we want to use TanStack Query instead. So we're going to do use post. And the cool thing about this is we can actually get rid of this. Where's threads getting? Oh, we could we could actually get rid of this function call. So right now, let's comment this out for a second. Right now we're calling use post, and this is, since it's a hook, it gets called on load. So we could pass in data. Oh, okay. I did miss a core step actually, now that I'm seeing this error message. The other thing you have to do is no query client selected. So we actually have to wrap, just like we have our auth provider and our GlueStack provider, we also have to add a query client provider. So definitely forgot that part. All good though. And then import it. And initialize it. and fix some of the spacing. There we go. You guys gotta let me know if you like seeing these error messages. I think it's helpful. Of course, I didn't do that on purpose. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I just kind of forgot as I'm talking through it. Luckily, that was a clear error message, but yeah, hopefully those error messages are helpful, because it's pretty common in coding in general. You're gonna always hit a bunch of error messages. I hate those tutorials when they just go everything through perfectly. That would never happen in real world. You're always gonna hit some errors sometime or another. Okay, so we have this query working, but in order to get this same functionality going again, so like we could see hello post, it doesn't call it right away, but then if we were to like reload, it then calls it. So this data use post is only getting called on load. So what we can do, remember that refetch function, we could import it into use posts, refetch, and then we can export it. So this is like returning, this is what we have available to us in the React component. Remember, this is just regular, this whole thing is just regular JavaScript, or in this case, TypeScript. And so that's why it has .ts instead of .tsx. And then in the React component, if I could find it, this is .tsx because this is React, the React flavor of JavaScript, as you could say. So we could do refetch. Let's do this. And so this is basically calling the same thing. So this will call refetch on a new post. So let's try new post here. There we go. So we have the same type of functionality with TanStack Query, and it'll just, it's kind of like built into it, the caching and the optimization part of it. And of course we could improve it as we go, but it's a good starting point. So now we can actually remove this local threads. We could remove Supabase because that's not being used here anymore. And yes, okay. So next thing we want to do is, what do we want to do? I think we want to make it look a little bit nicer. So right now, I mean, it has the information, but it looks pretty dang ugly. So let's clean that up a little bit. Okay, so home, we got this card. And honestly, this is probably going to end up being its own component as well. Oh, sorry, I meant this part. Anyway. Okay, so we got username. We should add some more spacing here. It's pretty tight. Actually, we could just do space MD. There we go. And then, what did I use P3 for? Oh, the whole thing in P3. Okay. Okay. I do like that better though. Okay. Username is bigger and bolder. Text size large. Yeah, that looks nice. And then for this date, we could actually use another library. Let's just do space MD. We could use another library that I kind of like, that does like, takes the date and does like from now. So you do like 3 days ago, this was posted. So let's install date. And this is just plain JavaScript. So that's the cool thing about React Native as well. You can kind of switch between native components or native libraries and just regular JavaScript. This is pretty straightforward. You don't need a whole specific React native library just to format some date. So we're going to do import from date FNS. And then the format is new date, 3 new date. I'm not actually sure what the format is, so let's try a few things. Okay, so this is the date that we have, and then new date. So we want to get the difference between right now and when it was created. Let it reload. And then we want to do these icons. So of course we're not gonna, in this example, there's some images, but we don't have images just yet. And then this little ellipses, we don't really need to do it right now, but the idea is that it does a pop-up so that you could report content, which is a requirement for both iOS and Android to get approved to the App Store. But we're gonna cover that in a later episode. Okay, so in about 5 hours, about 14 hours ago. Okay, so this is a fun one. So he says in about 5 hours, and that means it's in the future. So how does that happen? So the database is in UTC format, and we're displaying it in a local time format. So you have to modify, you have to turn your local time format into UTC format. Oh, distance from format distance to now. Oh, okay, got it. I was importing the wrong thing. And then I was putting this item.created@date is because this flat list could technically render with an empty array before the data gets populated, since we don't have any stops in there for it. And then it would try to evaluate item.created@date against, which would be null, might be null. So it would be null minus this date, and then that's when you get into an error. So that's why you put item.created@. Definitely ugly, but we could fix that in another episode. Okay, so now we have what we were looking for. 11 minutes ago, 12 minutes ago, about 19 hours ago. Okay, so keep that in mind. Almost, I don't want to say 100%, but I'm 99% sure that all databases are stored in UTC format. And then the app is going to be, if you just do new date, it's going to be local time format. So you're going to get errors where things seem like they're in the future, even though the dates are correct. So just make sure to turn everything into UTC in order to get the right time. Okay, so next thing I want to do is add those icons. So this should be quick since we already have Lucid icons. We want to put heart, icon, message circle, yeah. I think repeat icon, and then share. Let's see. I'm just guessing with these icons right now, so let's see how they look. So right now we have this H stack, and we want it to be below. Okay, it's already in a V stack, so we want to put an H stack under here. Heart, message, repeat, share. Ooh, almost. What is this one? Let's view all icons. Where the hell are the icons at? Oh, share. Or maybe send. There we go, send. Almost got it. And then they're pretty large. That works. And let's put some spacing around them. So spacing large. And then let's put some space between each one of these. So we want to put some space MD. better. There's a lot of space between this. Text bold, large. Text SS. Let's do large here. Okay. And then this is still a good amount of spacing. I wonder if do we need item center? There we go. And then, actually now that we changed that, I kind of like that. Looks good. Okay, so now we got all of our functionality. So we're going to start adding some features. Want to make some of these buttons actually do something. And I think one more thing I want to do is be able to make this clickable. So you want to be able to show the post and view.tsx view. Okay. And then in this view, I'm going to pass in this card. And then in here, we want to import. See, this is annoying. You can't just import it all from UI. So I'm going to go back here and copy and paste these items. Screw it. Remove everything that's not being used or duplicated. A safe area view not being used. Nope. Let's put this down here. Okay. There we go. So now we want to pass in this item, which is basically the post information. Post. Okay, so we already we created this post interface. So for TypeScript, what I want to do is create a types file and then move that type in there. And then export it so that we can then use it everywhere. So we're going to be using this post a lot of places. So now we could pass it in as a type, which is nice. And in order to get rid of these errors, we want to actually add to that type. See, this is where it's helpful. Okay, and then we could actually create another type as a user ID avatar. Okay, perfect. And actually that one will be optional because that's not always going to have, well, actually in this case it is always going to have a user, so I lied. And then you could also post reference itself because it could have children from the parent. And now let's go to where that was initially. So we can import it here. Is missing the following properties: post, user. No, see. We need to make it optional. There we go. Okay, and then I think we use it somewhere else too. Oh, there you go. So instead of doing any, like we put in the other day, we could put in post. Update post should be a function that takes in a string and some text. Okay. Item post. Is it used here at all? Nope. Okay. Not exactly what I was planning on doing, but fix the type as well. So now we can keep adding to this file because we're going to keep on getting like a like model, a repost model, a attachments model. Actually, model, maybe not under attachments model, but we could keep adding to here and then use them throughout the application that we see fit. Okay, I'm going to save the clicking on creating a new post since we're already at a lot of time right now, but we have our basic homepage looking a lot nicer. We have this gray stuff, kind of. Let's do background white. There we go. Okay, so now it's looking a lot nicer. And then on flat list, now that I'm doing this, you could do another thing too of on refresh. So you gotta do refresh. So you do refresh control. Wait, refreshing on refresh. Okay. So this is a cool part with hooks too. So typically when you're like having a loading screen, you have to do like some custom logic to see when it's loading and not. But since we're using TanStack Query, we can do is loading and then refresh. So on pull down to refresh, call this again to update the items, and then put the loading state. So let's just show that real quick. So we don't actually need that item. So right now, if we pull it down, you can see it load real quick, but there's no new information. So like if we did a new post here and posted it, it wouldn't show. But if we pull down the refresh, it shows new. Oh, that's confusing because I just put new post here. Okay. So yeah, there you go. And then in the next episode, like I said, we're going to make this clickable, maybe give this some functionality, and then be able to reply and see the threads on detailed view. So I hope you join me for the next one. Click subscribe, notification bell, so every single time I upload a new video, you get notified. And hope you join me for the next one. Peace.